Yo, what is going on, everybody? So before I start today, because this is going to be a crazy video, this is going to uncover some stuff that is just going to blow your mind. And in light of that, I just wanted to say thank you to the author of Land of the Losers for sponsoring today's video. It was basically a book that he wrote talking about his journey from the nice guy to someone who was actually successful with women. And I honestly, when I got this book, I couldn't put it down. I've left the links for it in the description to both the Amazon and the Smashwords link. If you go through Smashwords, there is a 20% off discount coupon. If you go through Amazon, well, then you go through Amazon and you can get it there. Either way, guys, it is a must read. I loved it. And it was, I could truly resonate with it as I could sort of see the progression from simp to a man, you know, and I've been through that progression myself through my years. But I'm not going to harp on that. If you want to get your hands on that book, check it out. Description below. So I'm going to start today because we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris's nomination as the vice president to Joe Biden if he were to become the presidential electee, the person who gets elected president of the United States in November. And I mean, look, my prediction is it's Trump 2020. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. But if I'm wrong, God help us all. And I'm not even a religious man, and I'm saying that. God help us all. Let me get into this. So my research on this video started with just a little simple search phrase in DuckDuckGo. Because of course I saw the news about Kamala Harris being chosen by Joe Biden as the vice presidential nominee. And in case you're wondering why I'm fumbling my words, I am on my first day off in numerous days and probably still haven't got enough sleep, but I'll get that tonight. So let me share the screen with you. I started with this. Kamala Harris, Biden. See all those tabs see those tabs across the top? Yeah, that's the rabbit hole I went down. So I'll get started with this. So it's funny that I scrolled to this particular point because there's literally thousands of entries, but Kamala Harris was in Biden's circle of trust. Then came debate night. Of course it did. But before I do anything, I really want to talk about how there's a greater agenda at play here. And Kamala Harris is actually the real presidential candidate because she is the figurehead for everything that the radical agenda stands for. And this radical agenda is being pushed on a global scale. Let me explain to you a bit about what's really going on. So United Nations Women, this is a feminist, a left-wing agenda to essentially control the entire world. Are you saying it's conspiracy theorists? Well, a conspiracy is when two or more people are conspiring together for a certain outcome. And a theory is when you have a theory about something. Now, there's one thing to have a theory about something. It's another thing to have a theory about something based on facts that you have at hand. And some facts that I have on hand are as here. So you got UN Women, feminists, Pride Month, Refugee Day. So all of these things sort of fit into this left-wing agenda, right? And I'm going to just go through these tabs. So my feminist agenda. And, you know, you can go and search through. This is September 30th, 2019. So if you guys want to look at the dates on these and just filter through for your own stuff, I haven't put all the links in the description because, as you can imagine, there'd be way too many links and it would just be an absolute shit show. But these are very easy to find. Go to Instagram and UN Women as the handle. So my feminist agenda. Every leader needs to adopt a feminist agenda. RIP patriarchy. Spooky fact for Halloween. Patriarchy is still alive and well. Time to bury it. That means you competent guys, men. You think that women and men should have equal rights and opportunities. Yes, congratulations, you're a feminist. No, try again. So apparently and look, I agree, no, try again, but I don't agree with what's after the yes. Right? Everyone should have equal rights and opportunities. In my view, some people may have a different view to that. That's my opinion, and you can like it or lump it, right? It's like I don't disrespect you for having a different opinion, but that's just where I stand. But I don't agree that you're a feminist if you believe that women and men should have equal rights and opportunities. Go and check out the word egalitarian because that is what that actually means. A feminist is an advocate for women's rights on the grounds of the equality of the sexes. Now, you might say, well, it says equality of the sexes. It's like, yeah, but that's like advocating for only eating apples on the grounds of nutrition. It's not the only element in nutrition. And if you always use this sort of shield, oh, well, it's on the grounds of equality of the sexes. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what it's on the grounds of. If you're advocating for legal entitlements, legally enshrined legislation that entitles you to certain things that men are not entitled to, well, then are you really saying that men should have equal rights and opportunities? Because there's plenty of gendered laws that specifically benefit women, right? And I could go into them, but I want to keep this video try and keep it under 20 minutes, although I don't know how I'm going to do that. But stick with me, guys, because this is really important. If you're voting in the election in the US, this is stuff that you need to know if you are considering voting for Biden. Now, this is the real truth about what feminism is.
But men have to recognize that the first step in being a feminist ally is relinquishing some of their power, because ultimately feminism is about taking that power away from men.
That's exactly what it is. On to our next post. Women in charge. Take a stand with everyone who won't accept the patriarchal status quo. Let's take action to change what we cannot accept. So let's get rid of the patriarchy that doesn't exist, and let's just put women in charge, because that's working out so well right now for absolutely everybody. Not. Intersectionality. So this is another thing that the UN Women pushes. A prism for seeing the way in which various forms of inequality often operate together and exacerbate each other. This is intersectionality is the framework for the attack on straight white men. The complex cumulative way in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination such as racism, sexism, and classism combine, overlap, or intersect, especially in the experiences of marginalized individuals or group. So basically, if you're successful, if you're not a person of color, hate using that term, but I'm going to use it because that's the term they use, or if you don't agree with a woman, because apparently sexism can only go one way, then you're part of the problem as far as the United Nations is concerned. Love is love. G. LGBT agenda. Pride. LGBT agenda. We will continue to stand up for LGBTIQ group rights. But I thought you were UN Women, not UN LGBTIQ. That's because all of this stuff ties in together. Feminist voices standing on the right side of history. So apparently, if you're not listening to women who only advocate for legally enshrined entitlements and rights for women, then you're on the wrong side of history, my friend, according to the United Nations, who are a global government's body. And look, they're losing a lot of power at the moment because of a lot of funding's been pulled from them, but they still have an enormous amount of power, an enormous amount of sway on cultural, social, and legal framework across the world. Generation equality. So what is generation equality? Because it sounds like they just want equality for the next generation, right? Wrong. This is part of the United Nations realizing women's rights. And it's, look, UN Women has launched the groundbreaking multi-generational advocacy campaign, Generation Equality, realizing women's rights for an equal future. Well, it's not equal if you only look at one person's rights out of two. You only look at 50%. Aiming to bring together the next generation of women's rights activists. Oh God, women's rights activists. Women's rights activists, they're the problem. They're the problem. Women don't, like in Australia, in the UK, in America, find any single issue that equally can affect men and women. And I can't find anything. I mean, look, there might be some places where you're not allowed to go topless. And, maybe I think that that's wrong. I support women being able to go topless, but don't complain when things don't work out for you. When people go, well, I'm going to look at your boobs. Because it's like, well, you guys are the ones that will only show us your boobs when we do what you want us to do, right? So it's like, for us, titties are a reward quite often, right? If we see the titties of someone that we've been wanting to see, right? It's a reward for us. And, look, without going too deep into that discussion, fundamentally, that's what it is. Because girls will say, well, we're not going to show you our titties if we don't like you, if we don't get what we want from you, if we're not attracted to you. Because under Robert Briefolt's law, women are the, what is it? Women determine all the conditions of the animal kingdom. And the first thing, the first step to us getting sexual access to you and being granted that is for women to start taking their clothes off, right? And the amount of articles I've seen that advocate for women withholding sex to get what they want is actually quite extraordinary. So for a collective group that seem to be against the seem to be against the objectification of women, and who seem to be against viewing women as sexual objects, you sure seem to sexually objectify yourselves. Because if you didn't want to sexually objectify yourselves, then you wouldn't leverage your sexuality and your bodies to get what you want from us. I've had my say on that, so I'm going to move on. This is the 2030 agenda. This is where everything falls under. This is unsdg.un.org. So this is actually on the United Nations website. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner there, it says photo UN women. Right, so this whole 2030 agenda is being driven by these people who put up the Instagram posts that you just saw. And these are the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, UN.org. This is on the United Nations website. Number 5, goal 5, gender equality. Empower women and girls and ensure their equal rights, but not the equal rights of men and boys, where they are being attacked and treated poorly, especially in a lot of third world countries. But I digress. So we've spoken for about 12 minutes now. So I'm really going to get into the core of this particular article today. So this was back on the 13th of July. This was written. Kamala Harris was in Biden's circle of trust. Then came debate night. So this happened a long time earlier, long time before the 13th of July, but it was September 2011. So this is 9 years ago now. And it's talking about, how there was the subprime mortgage crisis and there was a bunch of other issues. And she basically was in conflict with Biden. Now, I saw this particularly funny, and I love this guy. So meme. You may even be watching this video right now. This guy is a classic. I'm going to share with you this little this little animated video that he did on Biden Harris 2020, because this kind of leads into my next thing.
Joe, about your pick for
Take
VP.
note of the picture on the wall.
Wait a minute. I know you. Didn't you quit to go to work for Bernie? Well, yeah, but he refused to pay me. The whole each according to your abilities thing. He said he would make it up to me by letting me stand in a shorter bread line if he won. Yeah, that guy and his bread lines. Well, I appreciate you stopping by. Great meeting you. We'll have to do this again sometime. Sir? Sir? Burisma, what? Sir, I just heard that you picked Kamala Harris as your running mate. I did what now? Kamala Harris. Oh, is she that Indian chick? Kamala Marsala. Yep, sounds Indian. No, she's the one who tried to take you out in the debates by bringing up the busing issue. Kamala Marsala. Oh, crap. And here I thought I was picking Tulsi. Tulsi still has a restraining order against you, sir. You can't go within 50 feet of her hair. Oh, what a shame. So, what's Kamala's sniffability rating? Well, shouldn't we be worried about her electability instead? Well, to be honest, I'm more worried about my electability. Yeah, fair point. So, how does Kamala help the ticket? She doesn't. Well, why did you pick her then, sir? Just ask Willie Brown. He'll tell you.
So guys, if you like that video, as well as other funny videos that this guy does, check out meme on YouTube, and also go to cheesytunes.com if you want to see more of his content that can't be on YouTube because YouTube doesn't like it. Now, I'm going to show you this little clip of Biden, because essentially the Democrats who are nominating Biden, the puppeteers, the people that are controlling Biden from the top down. Oh God, I just realized that I kind of got the Tim Pool look going on, but I'm not going to take off the beanie because it's cold and I'm a bald ass bitch.
Proudly for your dad, first African-American state senator in the state of Delaware. Everything about. And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
So that's kind of concerning. Now, a lot of you guys may also have remembered this, and this is something that I really, 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 really want you to pay attention to. Listen to this. This is because what is being asked by this gentleman here is being pandered to right now, months later, by this guy.
And black people saved your political life in the primaries this year. They have things they want from you, and one of them is a black woman.
Right, so black people saved you in the primaries, and one of the things they want from you is a black woman.
Running mate. What do you say to them?
What I say to them is that I'm not acknowledging anybody who is being considered, but I guarantee you there are multiple black women being considered.
Multiple black women being considered as a Democratic running mate. So he's not considering white women. He's not considering men of any color, including black men. Right? And if the Democrats really care about black men, then they wouldn't exclude them from potentially being a running mate. But he doesn't care about that. He only cares about women, and especially black women, because that's what his puppeteers are telling him that they need to get in. Look back to intersectionality. Look back to this whole UN agenda.
Multiple.
Well, you know,
Thanks so much. That's really our time. I apologize.
You can't do that to black media.
I can't do that to white media and black media because my wife has to go on at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you.
Wait, he's in trouble from his wife. So just like, let's think about this for a second, right? Oh, I'm in trouble from my wife. If he's in trouble from his wife, imagine how much he's going to jump whenever his wife says anything. Imagine how much he's going to pander to Kamala Harris. Imagine how much he's going to pander to AOC. Imagine how much he's going to pander to all of these leftist women that screech and yell at him, just like his wife probably does, because he's a little soft cock. And I'm not one. Look, you guys know I'm typically not one to shame men, but this guy is just a weak ass motherfucker.
Come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my.
Hang on.
Nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see
Take a look at
right? So it's got nothing to do with Trump, right? It's about what I want from my community. And look, and I totally respect that he wants something for his community. And I want a lot of things for the black community that they don't yet have. And that's not because there's some policy that says black people can't have this, but there are other issues that are causing certain sects of the black community to be highly disadvantaged. Look, there's plenty of, and there's a lot of very, very disadvantaged people in the white community as well. What people don't seem to understand, or at least some people, they don't seem to understand that particular things that are happening to the black community are representative of a bigger problem, right? And that's just the highlighted issue. But there are so many things in terms of like school choices. There's a lot of, areas that have got a lot of ghetto white kids who don't have the choice of good schools, who can't read or write. Same as what's happening to a lot of African Americans as well. This is something that we need to look at on a broader scale. And single motherhood is probably the biggest issue facing the black community. It's also the biggest issue facing the white community, but there's just lower rate in the white community of single motherhood. So it's not impacting them overall as much on such a broad scale, on such a cultural level. As much as I want to pick semantics around what I've just said, I think you'll probably get where I'm coming from here. And there was someone that mentioned here. No, that's okay. Anyway, now that we've got past that one there, this is on the 27th of June, 2019. So this is around a year ago. Kamala Harris confronts Joe Biden about segregation during Democratic debate. Now, I didn't play the last part of that last video that I just showed you, the last couple of seconds, but Joe goes, have a look at my record, man. So let's have a look at his record on his support for busing, which is essentially giving publicly funded transport to kids that wouldn't otherwise be able to get to school, which, by the way, I'm fully in support of, because particularly for the underprivileged or people that don't have as much as other people have, whether they're white, black, purple, whatever the case may be, if you don't have a way to get to school, then you're not going to get to school. If you don't get to school, then you're not going to get educated. And if you don't get some level of education, then your opportunities are more limited than someone who would have an education. And so anyone who would be against busing, I have a problem with personally, because kids need to be supported. They really do.
Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get to
stage.
As the Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we worked very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major, major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden.
The LGBT community. Do you remember how that tied back into UN Women and they had the pride and the love is love is love is love is love? Right? This stuff all ties in together, guys. Don't be fooled. Look at what's happening. Keep your eyes open.
Do you agree today?
She's trying to pin him down. Look at this. She's trying to pin him down.
That you were wrong to oppose busing in America then.
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education.
He opposed busing ordered by the Department of Education. So why would he oppose that? Because he supports it if it's done by local council, right? Which means that the local council has to pay for the buses. And I don't, I'm not, every council is different. So, there's a discussion to be had there about the practicality of local councils doing it. But if it's local council dependent and some councils support it and some don't, then the councils that don't, that have disadvantaged kids in it, that can't get around, are going to end up with kids that don't have schooling. Right, that don't have schooling. And by the way, thank you to Shinobi One. Says, "Mikta blessings be upon you, brothers." I appreciate that.
That's what I opposed.
Well,
I
there
did
was
not
a
oppose.
failure of states to integrate
No, but-
public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a
So
local
that's where the
decision.
federal government must step
The
in. That's
federal
why we have the
government must
Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to
pass the Equality Act. Very, very important thing to remember from this speech, and I'm going to get into that in a second.
pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all
I have
people.
supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran.
All right, so she's talking about states failing to protect the civil rights of the people. Think about what Kamala is like. Kamala is essentially going to turn around and start asking all of the states to implement all of the policies that she wants if she gets into a significant enough position of power. That's my prediction. I don't think that I'm far off there at all. In fact, Aussie MGTOW Bear, a longtime supporter of this channel, says Kamala is a pawn, and when she finds out how much they're using her, she'll change sides. No, I don't think she will, because she's too far on that agenda to back down. She's really not. She's going to stick on this bandwagon. Whether she denounces Biden, she's still going to stay on that side of politics. That's my prediction. That's my view. But yes, thank you, Aussie MGTOW Bear. I appreciate that, man. Joe Biden buries. So this is. Let's just have a look, right? So 27th, or was it 27th of last month? Whatever it was. So it's like 4 or 5 days prior to this article. Joe Biden buries the hatchet and looks to bring in Kamala Harris as running mate. California senator has been painted as disloyal. Sorry, no, I apologize. That previous video was about a year ago. California's, was it? I don't know. Whatever. But I mean, the fact that that discussion had to be had, and the fact that Biden had the responses he had, was very telling. Whether that was 4 days, a month ago, or whether it was a year and a month ago, it's irrelevant. It's still very, very recent. And unless he comes out outwardly in favor of busing implemented by the state, I'm going to assume that he holds the same position. So Biden buries the hatchet and looks to bring in Kamala as running mate. She's clear favorite to be number 2 in the White House. Underneath the picture of herself, I know Joe's heart, and I've seen firsthand his compassion and dedication to public service. Yeah, except busing. He'll be a president for all of us, and I'm giving everything I've got to help him succeed this year. Right. So Kamala Harris is the same person who has been shaming senators for apparently doing Donald Trump's personal bidding, pushing forward with the Biden probe. So would she be against senators for doing Joe Biden's personal bidding by proceeding with a Trump probe? Of course she wouldn't, because this is a totally one-sided argument, and she's a totally one-sided woman. She has no interest in being fair, reasonable, or taking a balanced approach to this, or applying the same standards to both sides. Democrats try to stop her from being Biden's vice presidency pick. So this is interesting. This is where politics start to collide, because there's obviously, if this is true and factual, if this piece of media is being accurately reported, well, what you're actually going to see is a lot of unrest within the Democrat Party, which is going to splinter support for them. I see there being a massive shit show if the Dems get in, both outside of the party and within the party. Now, I searched up Kamala Harris Equality Act. Kamala Harris brings pro-LGBTQ record to Biden ticket. AOC and Kamala Harris introduced Climate Equality Act. Yeah, that's right. Her and AOC are buddies. All right, here we go. When the California senator first entered elected office in San Francisco in 2004, she represented a city where LGBTQ rights were given. She's got the rainbow coat on. She's at the Pride Parade on June 30th, 2019. It's clear the Biden-Harris ticket marks our nation's most pro-equality ticket in history, says Alfonso David, president of the Human Rights Campaign, the company's largest LGBTQ rights group, said in a statement. Interesting. So it's not actually a human rights campaign. It's an LGBTQ rights campaign. That's what it is. Let's not call a spade a whippersnipper. Let's not call a cat a dog. Right? You can't hide the fact that this is what's going on. Look, the internet's, in my view, caused a lot of social fracturing over the decades, but it's also given us a lot of opportunity to find out the truth about what's really going on. And this is why people like Kamala Harris, people like Joe Biden, their type, tend to try and censor what is being spoken about, try and dictate what can and cannot be on the internet. Biden picks Kamala Harris as running mate. First black woman. So that's really what it's about. By the way, click the like button, as Luke Chase says. Thank you for that comment, Luke Chase. I appreciate that. Joe Biden named California Senator as his running mate, making history by selecting the first black woman to compete on a major party's presidential ticket and acknowledging the vital role black voters will play in his bid to defeat President Donald Trump. So this isn't about anything but defeating Trump, because Trump stands in the way of the UN agenda. Trump defunded the UN. He pulled funding from them because they weren't playing ball. Right? They were using the US as a meal ticket. Right? So the people that are pulling the strings on Biden and also on Harris, right? They're the people that are really pushing this agenda. They're the people that want Trump out, because Trump is not beholden to anyone but himself. Right? You can't touch Trump. Right? Even if you get him out of the presidency, he's still loving life. He's still killing it. Right? He's still a fucking boss. And I think, and I'm not going to claim this absolutely because I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I'm like 99% sure I'm spot on with this. Trump is the only US president in history to be less wealthy by the end of his presidency than otherwise, right? So he's basically gone backwards financially. Whereas if he'd been running his business instead of running for presidency, well, then he'd be killing it. But yet all of the other US presidents seem to be much richer after their presidency. Why is that? Well, it seems that money talks. But Trump has money, so he doesn't give a shit. He cares more about America than he cares about money. He's like, I got billions. I don't give a shit about a couple of extra 100 million. Like, so what? I care about my country more. He's not going to run out of money before the end of his life. No way. His empire is going to live on for decades, centuries probably. Here we go. Biden-Harris. Kamala Harris will be the next vice president of the United States. Look at the wording of that. Will be. Not is the nominee. She will be the next vice president of the United States. So unless Trump is also nominating Kamala Harris as the vice president for the Republican Party, they're pretty much saying we are getting rid of Trump, period. So let me read more about how Kamala Harris will be the next vice president of the US. Together, we will beat Donald Trump. The first sentence, this is back to intersectionality. The first Black and Indian American woman to represent California, right? Don't sit around and complain about things, do something, which is what drives Kamala every day. But what if what she's trying to do is not in the best interest of the country, right? Again, became the first Black woman. It's all about black. And I'm glad that we're seeing Black representation, and we're seeing, representation from all different groups, but this is something that shouldn't be forced. And it should be something that people do because they want to. And clearly Kamala has, and she's obviously been very successful. And I tip my hat to her for going as far as she has in politics. But when you're pushing policies that attack me personally, I have a problem with that. Biden and Harris pledge a strong challenge to Trump and a path out of crisis. Oh, yeah, because the crisis is going to be so much less when they start to push socialism and start to push communist policies and start to push their leftist propaganda and their leftist policies, the LGBTQ stuff. I mean, look, if you're gay or if you're LGBTQ and you're watching this stream, like, this isn't an attack on you. This is just me saying, look, I know you guys have got a little bit tough, right? I know people may sometimes look at you differently, but most people are totally cool with what you want to do with your lives. So I don't know that we need to actually legislate control of what I can and can't say. I got no problem if you get an issue with straight people, whatever. So what? Just as long as you don't push it into politics and legislation, right? Like let's have a social conversation about this. Let's move on. Exclusive. This is on Reuters. Harris could help Biden with women, young voters, maybe some Republicans too. So what Kamala is acknowledging, well, what they're acknowledging here is that Biden is not great. He's not in favor with women and young voters. So Kamala is basically trying to gain him favor with women and young voters so they can get more voters, so they can get into power. Kamala's co-sponsored bill that would force schools to let male athletes compete in girls' sports. Again, LGBTQI or LGBTIQ, whatever, LGBT agenda. And this was on August 11th, 2020. Now, I'm in two minds about this. So from a kind and compassionate and decent perspective, I'm like, I don't agree with this because it's not fair to let biological males compete against biological females. That's why we've had classes and categories for so long. However, I kind of support this because this is the only way that you're going to get people that are normally all about the progressive agenda to turn against those who are pushing the progressive agenda. And I'm all for a bit of popcorn eating, so that's why I would be in favor of that, but only for that reason. AOC and Kamala Harris introduced Climate Equity Act. So we've got race, we've got women, we've got now we've got climate. We've got climate justice and racial justice. Climate Equity Act that links climate change to racial justice. Representative AOC and Senator Kamala Harris introduced a new bill in Congress on Thursday meant to combat climate change. How will this new legislation prevent the planet from heating up? By creating equal economic outcomes for all races. Remember that. Equal economic outcomes for all races. In the same vein as the highly criticized Green New Deal, the Climate Equity Act forwards the philosophy of environmental and climate justice and ideology that links the issue of the climate crisis to the liberal social justice agenda. It's not me saying it's an agenda, it's everyone else, right? I'm just reading it, you know what I mean, and regurgitating it. I thought that was what university professors liked, for us to regurgitate the bullshit that they tell us. So I went and found that tweet. For a year, AOC and I have worked with communities on landmark legislation to ensure that we fight the climate crisis as we center that fight in justice and equity. Today, we're formally introducing the Climate Equity Act in Congress. So, good comment from Scott Carter. Equity. Some people are more equal than others. Indeed, Scott. Indeed. So let me go. What is I wonder what's on AOC's little. No American should be too poor to live. Look, I agree with that. I agree. Unfortunately, the practicalities of everyone being comfortable. There's not a country in the world where everyone's comfortable. Even in some of the most egalitarian, even some of the most socialist countries. In fact, socialist countries, usually there's more people that can't live. Harris and AOC team up on a climate equity bill, leaving activists is the problem, hoping for unity. Here we go. When Senator Kamala Harris introduced climate equity legislation, climate activists saw it as a hopeful sign of democratic unity less than 3 months before a hugely consequential election. I wonder what are the consequences for the Democrats not to get elected, with both the White House and the Senate up for grabs. Now, I had a look, right? Because this whole equity versus equality thing, remember I mentioned equity just a moment ago. So I went digging and it says, if you like equity versus equality, you might love these ideas. I found this here first, right? Equality and equity. So equity basically means that you have to give more to people that have less. And what would happen if, I mean, that this is a very insidious representation because, look, I'm all for everyone being able to see at a baseball game, right? I would never be against that. I love baseball. But they've used this, right? Saying, well, these are people that can't see over the fence. So we've got to help everyone see over the fence. Okay, fair enough. But what if you've got 3 people that are standing on stacks of money that they've earned for themselves? What happens when you go, okay, well, this guy's got 1 stack of money, so we're going to take half of what he has. So we're going to take all of what he has and give it to this person, right? Well, if that's the case, then now this guy's broke. Equity. Because we have white male privilege, we don't need any help. Do you see what I'm saying here? And this is the insidious nature, right? They've corrupted language. They've corrupted the representation of things so that people go, well, hang on, that's pretty fair. You know, I agree with that. And they're trying to redistribute wealth. This is socialism, except the difference is if you take 1 box of money from this guy and give it to this kid, well, this kid doesn't actually get 1 box of money. And not only that, he's had a significant chunk of his portion taken away. So he probably ends up with less than a box because you're now taking all the money that he has and giving it to other people that don't have any. And those people that don't have any, that are getting given money that other people have earned, now have no incentive to go out and work hard and earn money. What incentive do they have? They don't. By the way, Big Time Mike says, keep up the great work, brother. I appreciate you, Big Time Mike. Thank you for that, man. I will continue to keep up the great work. I promise you. So yeah, when you see stuff like this, you might go, well, it's kind of fair. You want everyone to see the game. No, that's not what this is about. This is money and power. They want to take all the power away from the adult and give it to the children, which is why they are funneling so much money into feminist groups, because they are acting like children. Now let's have a look at this as well. Inequality, unequal access to opportunities, right? Because the tree is like bent over to the left, well, bent over that way, and the apple is falling into the hands of the person on the left. And then you kind of go, well, equality is where you've got the same ladder height, so you can both, in theory, you're both at the same level, so you should be able to reach. It's like, well, the person on the left has things leaning towards them, and the other person's like, oh, I can't get an apple. And then you go down a bit further, and you go equity, custom tools that identify and address inequality, which is increasing the size of the ladder on the side of the person for whom the apples are further out of reach. But then it says justice, fixing the system. So creating a systematic framework, a legislative framework that offers equal access to both tools and opportunities. So what they're basically doing is they're now pushing, look at this, they're pushing the tree away from the person who just happened to come across some good fortune towards the other person, right? So that everyone can have an equal amount. Well, what if the person on the left-hand side had worked really, really hard all their lives to fertilize the side of the tree that they were on, right? To give it nutrients so that it would grow more apples, so that they could quite literally later on garner the fruits of their labor. And as a result of there being more fruit on that side, it's been heavier on that side with fruit. And as a result of it being heavier on that side with fruit, it's leaned over that way. And because it's leaned over that way, well, this is what he worked for all this time. This is what he worked for. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put stilts in place to push the weight of the fruits of his labor away from him, right? So we're actually going to get it going in the opposite direction. No, sorry. It doesn't matter that you fertilized this tree. It doesn't matter that you worked so hard to give this tree nutrition. It doesn't matter that you nurtured and looked after and cared for this tree. Because here's the thing, it doesn't show what happened before these fruits started falling. It only shows what happens after the fruit started falling. And over here is little Tommy, who's been sitting at home, basically doing nothing. And look, there's people that they catch shitty luck. That happens sometimes. And I'm not going to speak against those people because look, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. And it sucks when luck is not on your side. It does. But wouldn't that encourage you to build a bigger ladder rather than waiting for someone to hand it to you while you've got a question mark above your head? Wouldn't that encourage you to maybe climb up the tree? And maybe if you're you're a real hustler, maybe go over the other side of the tree, befriend that person, say, hey man, let's give this tree some nutrients all around, right? And then we're gonna have some serious fruit. That's how you hustle. Right? That's called a joint venture, man. And if you can get more than twice the amount of fruit, then no one's going to say no to that. Right? And on top of that, the tree is going to balance itself out to be more center leaning. So you're not going to have that tilt one way anymore. And so people can work together to fix things. You can't just come in and go, no, we're putting that there and we're going to take all of that away from him and give it to this person. Notice how there's fruit everywhere now, not just like on here. How did all of that fruit suddenly get over there? Well, it didn't get over there because you started leaning things that way. What would have had to have happened is he or she, whoever that person is, would have had to have come over that side and do all the work on that side. So now this person's putting in double the work, so this person can have half of the rewards of double the work. Now, what's really interesting, this is on Pinterest. So I was like, I'll start, and I started a new account under Sydney to, see there, just started it today, not following anything. This is empty. I'll show you why. Because I clicked on save because I wanted to save this for the video. And it came up with suggested board names, equality, positive memes, words, justice, feminism, teaching. And there was actually some other different words previously that aren't on there now. But do you see how feminism, teaching, justice, equality, equity, all of these things tie in together? Whenever you hear this used as political rhetoric, that's what's going on. And it's not good. All right, it's really not good. So I'm going to move on. And this is typical CNN, how to talk to your children about protests and racism as cities and social media explode with anger over the killing of yet another black man at the hands of police. And only black men. Worried parents struggle with how to protect their children from seeing the worst of the violence while simultaneously explaining the ravages of racism. Now, by the way, thank you, Ian Williams, for that donation. I appreciate you, man. I did want to say, make it very, very clear, because I know a lot of brothers follow me as well, and I appreciate you guys. It is a statistical fact that as a percentage of racial demographic, there are less white men killed by police than there are less black men killed by police than there are white men as a percentage of the population. I do support reforms to policing to reduce police brutality across the board. I do support the notion that people should not be attacked based on their race. Right? What I would say, if there is any, and look, there's some, like, for example, there's some Latino gangs, and these guys, like MS-13, right? If they're causing an overrepresentation of crime in their community, then what's going to happen is that even Latinos that are not MS-13 members are going to get targeted, right? Because they've created a stereotype, and and it's different in Australia, right? Because in America, people have got firearms, right? You have the right to carry arms as long as you're licensed for it. So as if I'm a police officer in the States, I'm always going to be on the offensive. I'm always going to be on the defensive, personally, if I was a US police officer of any area, because, and especially if there's higher rates of gun crime in the black community, I'm going to be more on guard when there's a black guy that I pull over, right? Especially if something is sus about him in terms of like driving slowly past houses and I've been pulled over for driving slowly as well. That's actually one of the things that police are trained to pull people over for, driving slowly, because it can be an indication of intoxication as well. I saw that on RBT last night on it's pretty much the only show I watch on TV. So, there's multiple reasons why, particularly in majority black communities where there's a lot of black crime, then that police officers would be a little hesitant to drop their guard, and why sometimes they may be a little bit overzealous. But look, I would really hope that over the coming years, we can start to have a bit of unity and start to have an honest discussion about crime and about police brutality. And by the way, about fixing the issues which disproportionately impact the African American community, which disproportionately result in particularly young black men ending up in a life of crime, right? Because, man, black kids are not criminals. White kids are not criminals. Latino kids are not criminals. But if in your community you have significant weight of factors that are not as prevalent in other communities that cause kids, particularly young males, to end up in lives of crime and living lives of despair. I mean, man, there's a lot of kids out there. I would say there's probably more kids in the US that are going hungry right now than anyone else. Right? Tiny Temper, heard his song Written in the Stars, trying to turn a tenner to $100,000. This is a kid that's only got $10 and he's dreaming. He wants something for himself. He says, man, my hunger would leave you amazed. Right? Even Tupac talks about being hungry. Right? Tupac was raised to a single mother who was on welfare, right? Who had kids to two different fathers, right? And he talks about how hungry he was as well. Like, I'm hearing this theme over and over again, particularly with black musicians that have become successful, talking about their struggles and what they had to go through in their communities. And I really would love to see a lot of the factors that are causing poverty, that are causing high levels of crime in communities, regardless of who are in those communities, to be eradicated, because this is what's causing the problems. This is what's causing the butterfly effect and the outwards ripple. By the way, Skupon says, Harris, American virtue signaling at its manipulative best. Biden is using her for the black vote. That's all. That's correct. And they even mentioned that before. See, here's the thing. Biden is not going to last. He's not. He's not going to last. Because with everything that he's been fumbling on, right, he's just in my view, he's completely incompetent as the president of the United States. And given that he's completely incompetent, well, he's eventually going to find himself ousted, or he's going to be pushed out of the presidency. And if he gets pushed out of the presidency, guess who the new president is? AOC's bum chum, right? AOC's best friend, right? The pusher of the leftist propaganda, pushing of LGBTQ propaganda, pushing of the agenda, pushing of feminists, pushing of racial issues, right? If you make things about race, they're going to become about race. Damon Wolf MGTOW says, there are good and bad people. It depends on how they're raised. But with the way I see the country going, the smart should be preparing for war. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish it wasn't the case. But I believe that that is the case. That was very well spoken, Damon Wolf. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for the donation. And, when we sort of talk about equity and equality, teaching our kids what equality really means, And by the way, where's Danielle? I'm just going to zoom in on this, right? This is this woman saying we should teach our kids about equality. She is a university lecturer. She's a leftist, right? And I mean, I'm happy for Danielle McLaughlin to prove me wrong on that. I'm happy for her to say, look, I'm not a leftist, but are you really going to come out and say you're Republican? Come on, man. A recipient of the 2010 to 2011 Law Foundation of Ontario Community Leadership in Justice Fellowship. She spent the first 6 months of 2011 as a visiting fellow at the Faculty of Education at the University of Windsor. She's developed and delivered CCLET, teaching civil liberties and civil liberties in the schools program. So she's basically part of the indoctrination of kids, right? Each year engaged thousands of students from kindergarten to high schools. She is co-author of That's Not Fair stories. Remember back to the apple tree, right? So, you know, I'm very dubious about this person. Do your children really know what equality means? Let's celebrate International Youth Day by helping our children to become the citizens we want them to be. Think about that. Become the citizens we want them to be. Who's we, Danielle? Who's we? Right? Is we the Kamala Harrises? Is we the AOCs? Is we all the leftist university professors that are indoctrinating all the teachers, that are indoctrinating all the media personalities, that are indoctrinating the new politicians coming up, that have got degrees in political science, that are indoctrinating people in economics so that money doesn't matter anymore, numbers don't matter? I saw a thing the other day, numbers are racist. Wow, 2 plus 2 equals 4 is racist somehow because it's perpetuating heteronormative patriarchal concepts of what numbers should be. This is like how stupid these people are, how insane they are. And these people are the manifestation of these people is represented by the vice president running candidate beside Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. That's what she represents. All of this crap. All of this crap. We invite you to tell your children's Today story on the Civics for Kids website. Oh God, I missed that one. Wonder what's on the Civics for Kids website. TVOparents.tvo. While I'm waiting for that to load, Today's Family, teaching children about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Race. Tell your child that race is not a real scientific fact. Racism. So you've literally just said that race isn't a thing, and now you're talking about racism. This is what these people are like. They're incredible. But of course, social identity and social justice comes first. The golden rule. Bring together everyone except straight white men. Scoopum with another donation. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Says, I'm a lawyer and studied at La Trobe University under one of Australia's prominent feminist academics in the 90s. These teachings lead to racial profiling and sentencing. Exactly. Not good. Happy to have a chat. Enjoy the $40. I appreciate that, man. Flick me an email. I would love to have a conversation with you about what you saw back in the 90s with what's going on in the legal profession. I know it's just gotten worse. Basically, when you study law at university now, it's basically feminist studies with a bit of law thrown in. Anyway, what else have I got here? And I'm sorry that I've like thrown you under the bus with so many different things. Look, explaining equity to kids, teaching kids about race, privilege, equality, and civil rights, how to teach kids about cultural awareness, how to explain home equity in the home, teaching children about diversity, equity, inclusion. This one's a doozy. This one is like next level. How to teach children about cultural diversity and awareness. Have you ever had an embarrassing moment where your child maybe quite loudly asked you about some sort of characteristic of another person? For example, "Mummy, why does that woman look like that?" The typical parental reaction is to attempt to quiet the child and move on as quickly as possible. Well, of course, when it's mummy. But, you know, I was actually thinking about that when I read it. I thought, you know, if I had a kid and a kid came up to me and, you know, there was like a, you know, disabled person or someone who was, knock my mic there, disabled person or a, you know, African-American man or African-American woman, I got to tell you, I would smile and I'd say, you know what, I'm really glad you asked me that question because you don't look the same as me, do you? Well, yeah, I do. It's like, well, not really, because you look a bit like me and a bit like mum. And not everyone has the same mum and dad. And I'm going to teach them about evolution before it even gets to that point. I'm going to teach kids about evolution from a very young age if I have them. And this is the thing, right? You have to be willing to go head on with a conversation like that. Because if you say, look, the reason that they look different is because their parents look very similar to them. And their parents look very similar to them because that's how DNA is passed down. But yet their mum and their dad wouldn't have looked the same as their mum and their dad. So everything changes with every different generation. People evolve and change. You know, some people, have darker skin because maybe they lived in a hotter climate, right? For example, North Africa. You know, obviously Africans are very dark, and you need to have dark skin to be able to weather the sun in those environments, particularly if you haven't typically had a lot of shelter. You know, if you've lived off the land for so many years, and obviously things are more, I'm going to say civilized in terms of people having more housing and whatnot. But way back when people didn't have housing and shelter, it's like, well, what have they got? They've got the sun and they've got the natural surroundings. So you have to adapt to that. Right? And as you adapt, your DNA changes, and your DNA gets passed on. This is evolution. Anyway, guys, I've gone for about an hour now, and it's been a pretty full-on video. But I hope that all of you got from this what I'm trying to convey, which is that Kamala Harris is essentially the next vice president. So she's the next president of the US, because she's been Biden was put there by the puppets. Kamala has been put under Biden by the puppets. And the puppets know that they're going to remove Biden and put Kamala up there so that all of these agendas can get essentially catered to. So that's what's really going on. And I'd just like to thank all of you gentlemen for coming in here and listening, because this is a really important issue. Please smash the thumbs up, leave a comment, like, share. And, if you're always up for a good read and you want to hear the story of a really cool guy who went from complete simp to someone who got women and had a lot of success with it, check out Land of the Losers. They are the sponsor of today's video. And the links to get that from Smashwords and Amazon are in the description below. The ebook from Smashwords, there's a 20% off code that I've left there in the description. Alternatively, you can get your hands on it from Amazon, Amazon UK, Amazon US, Amazon Australia, and Amazon somewhere else as well. I can't remember. But there's like 4 different Amazon links that you can check out. They're the main countries that my followers are from. Man, I appreciate you. If you want to support this channel, feel free to check out Brave Browser if you haven't already. It's basically a replacement for Chrome that works the same as Chrome, but with more privacy. And there's also PayPal if you want to drop me some coin that way. Other than that, I appreciate you guys. I look forward to catching you in the next video. I'm going to be doing videos more often these days. But until next time, peace.